So I've just watched the new Matilda musical, and oh my goodness, the trauma in the story of Matilda um is just, oh my goodness. Um I watched that movie. There's the American version from years ago, and because I wasn't on my healing journey, because I was not trauma informed, um I did not pick up on what I picked up during this movie today. And oh, just so many things, so many thoughts. But the first thing I want to highlight is the disassociation. So because she goes through so much trauma, her parents don't want her, they treat her terribly. She's terribly neglected and abandoned, and she's having to really kind of figure out life by herself. She's able to disassociate, and they even, like, their neglect is so bad that they forgot to take her to school. Um anyway, so she ends up going to school at a much older age, and she at the school, the headmistress is also a bully. So not only is she being bullied at home by her caregivers, by her parents, but she's being bullied at school by the principal, who already does not like her because her dad called the principal, the headmistress, to tell her what a horrible person Matilda is. But also, so she doesn't like her because of that, but she also doesn't like her because of Matilda starts standing up for herself and for other kids. But just the trauma. So anyway, there's one scene where the headmistress is really, really annoyed, and she's yelling at Matilda, and Matilda's talking, you know, we kind of get a sneak view into her mind, and we can see how all the noise is like making her kind of, just, it's just too loud. And she says there's a lot of noise. And then she says that she finds somewhere to go. And we see her on a hot air balloon just relaxing. And talk about disassociation. And we see her on this hot air balloon above the clouds. So there's all these clouds and she's sitting above them. And if you're not trauma informed, you would miss that. I would have missed that. But because I know disassociation now, I understand it, because I've been there, where I've been on the outside looking into my life because the pain was too unbearable to bear. Too unbearable to bear, but you know what I mean, was unbearable. Like her being outside over this cloud, watching the storm, and having peace and being quiet, because there's too much noise in real life, was just, for me, like such a heartbreaking moment, but also a moment of, like, thank goodness that we learn to disassociate when we're children, because that is the only way we get to survive. When you're going through too much pain, too much neglect, too much abuse, and your body starts disassociating, your mind starts disassociating, it's to help you survive. And I just had a real kind of, like, oh my goodness, just uh, and then another thing that really stood out for me is how bullies and narcissistic people change the goal all the time. So the headmistress, there's a scene where there's a boy who ate her cake, a piece of cake. A child eats her piece of cake, and she figures it out because he does this big burp, and she smells it and figures out that it's him. So she says to him, your punishment is to eat this whole cake, and it's a massive cake. And the boy eats it because everybody's rooting for him. Literally, everybody's rooting for him because the other punishment will be worse. So when the boy finishes eating the cake, the headmistress decides that that's not enough punishment. She changes the goal. She changes the punishment. She changes the standard. And that's every narcissist on this planet. They change the goal. They change you know, the standard all the time. And it's just such an unfair game, especially for children who take every word as it is. So that really stood out for me, and it just broke my heart, and it just shows us how bullies are just horrific human beings who are in so much pain, first of all, but they're not dealing with their pain, so they have to take out their pain on other people. And then the other thing that really stood out for me is what children represent. I'm a mom of three boys, and oh my goodness, like, seeing those children being bullied by this headmistress, and yet they still represent freedom and true vulnerability, and like just so much goodness and kindness and gentleness, and forming together unity, and without having to change yourself. Like, for me, that was just so beautiful. And that's why I realized as the movie continued that the headmistress hates the students so much, because for them, she calls them maggots. She has no time for them. And, as you walk into the school, there's a sign that says, "None of you are special." And I think the problem that she has with kids is because they represent freedom, they represent like realness, they represent all that is good in this world and all that is possible in this world. They represent dreams, and they represent magic, and they represent just being truly restful and being truly authentic, being your true self. And she's not capable of being that because she's too far gone. She killed her sister, she killed her sister's husband. Like, she's just not capable to be her true self. And because of that, she hates the kids, because they represent like their what it looks like to be a true authentic person. And yeah, but it's just it's funny, like, how when you become trauma informed, it really changes everything. Like, now I cannot watch a movie, I cannot read a book, I cannot read the Bible without seeing the impacts of trauma on humanity, and how that changes how we live our lives. It changes how we relate with other people. And yeah, but I recommend watching that movie, Matilda. It's a musical, it's beautiful. Lashanya Lynch, the girl can sing, and she brought it as well. She's Miss Honey. The wee girl, I can't remember her name, that played Matilda, she did such a fantastic job. And is it Emma Watson as well, the one that played Agatha, the headmistress? She's such a great actor, and she really brought it. um and yeah, but for me, I just, the trauma, the CPTSD, the complex trauma, and watching this little girl try to find her home, trying to find somewhere to fit in because her parents never wanted her. Oh, another thing that really stood out for me is how when our caretakers are neglectful, we end up in really neglectful spaces. And if our caretakers are bullies, then we end up in spaces that are also full of bullying. And I think, had they been good, attentive parents, she might not have ended up in that school. But obviously we see how that all changes, how all that works out for her, because she meets Miss Honey, and they end up creating a home together. But our caretakers, how much attention they pay to us, how they treat us, determines the spaces that we end up occupying in the future. Until we start dealing with that trauma and we start healing. But anyway, that's my little 2 cents on the movie. But it just, such a good movie. I'm gonna watch it again.